She almost didn't stop. She was exhausted, underpaid, running on nothing but stubbornness and the quiet hope that tomorrow would be a little lighter than today. And right there, on the floor of a cold parking garage in Atlanta, Georgia, was a wallet that didn't belong to her, full of cash she could have used, and a number she almost didn't call. She called it, and the man who picked up was not who she expected. This is the story of what happened next. Stay with me, because this one is going to stay with you. Okay, so I need you to stay with me on this one. Because this story doesn't start the way you think it does. There's no big moment, no dramatic music, no sign from the universe pointing her in the right direction. It starts in a parking garage, in Atlanta, Georgia, on a Tuesday evening, when a woman who had already worked 11 hours that day almost walked right past something sitting on the ground. And that almost, that one small, tired, could have gone either way almost, is what this whole thing is built on. Her name is Arielle Whitmore, 32 years old, single mom, one kid, a boy named Micah, 7 years old, serious eyes, the kind of kid who doesn't smile unless he really means it. She's been on her feet since 6 that morning, and all she wants is to get to her car, get home, and just breathe, just for a minute. But she sees it. A wallet, just sitting there on the ground near the tire of a car she doesn't recognize. She picks it up, looks around, nobody. Opens it, not to take anything, just to find a name. But there's no ID, just a stack of cash she doesn't count, a few cards she doesn't recognize, and one plain white card with nothing on it but a phone number. She stands there in that cold garage, feet aching, smelling like antiseptic and a very long day. And she hears her mother's voice, clear as anything. How you handle what doesn't belong to you, that's your real character, baby. So she calls the number. She had absolutely no idea who was going to pick up. It rang twice. And then a man answered, low voice, calm, like he was already in the middle of something and I was a small pause in it. Yes, he said. Just that, just, yes. I told him I found a wallet, described it, slim, black, no ID, told him I hadn't touched the money. There was a pause, not nervous, more like he was confirming something to himself. Where are you? He asked. I told him, parking garage on Delmer, level 2. Don't move, he said. Someone will be there in 8 minutes. And he hung up. 8 minutes. Not soon. Not give me a second. 8. That specific number made something in my stomach tighten in a way I couldn't explain. 7 minutes later, not 8, 7, a black Audi rolled down the ramp. Slow, deliberate, tinted windows, the kind of quiet that expensive things sometimes carry. A man in a dark suit stepped out, tall. He walked toward me with his hands where I could see them. I noticed that detail and stopped a few feet away. MS. Whitmore, I said. Arielle Whitmore. He nodded, like he was filing it somewhere, held out his hand for the wallet. I gave it to him. He opened it briefly, checked something, then looked back at me. He'd like to meet you, he said. I blinked. Who would? The owner. I almost laughed. I was exhausted. Micah was at home with Ms. Dorothea, and whoever owned this wallet was not my problem anymore. I'm good, I said. I just wanted to return it. He nodded slowly, reached into his jacket, pulled out a card. He said you'd say that, he told me. He said to give you this anyway. I took it. I don't know why. Reflex, maybe. The card was heavy, matte black, small silver letters on the front. I looked up, but the man was already walking back to the car. The Audi rolled back up the ramp. And I was alone in that garage with nothing but the smell of concrete, the hum of the lights above me, and a card I didn't ask for. I stood there longer than I should have. The garage was almost completely empty by then. Just that low mechanical hum overhead and the faint smell of rain creeping in from outside. That heavy, pre-storm kind of air that settles in your chest. I looked at the card. Ji-Hoon Kang. No title, No company name, just the name, and a Charlotte, North Carolina number. I put it in my jacket pocket and got in my car. Told myself I wasn't going to think about it. Thought about it the whole drive home. Micah was already in his pajamas when I walked through the door. Ms. Dorothea had fed him rice and some kind of chicken that smelled better than anything I'd made all week, honestly. He was at the kitchen table doing a worksheet, pencil moving the way he does everything. Slow and deliberate. He looked up when I came in, didn't smile, just watched me for a second with those old eyes of his. "You look tired, Mama." "I am, baby. Ms. Dorothea said you should eat something." Ms. Dorothea is right. I warmed up a plate and sat across from him, just watched him work. That's the thing about Micah. Being in the same room as him turns the volume down on everything. All the noise in my head just settles. But later, after he was asleep, I found the card in my pocket. I sat at the kitchen table with it. Just me and the quiet, and this small, heavy card between my fingers. I turned it over, turned it back. Ji-Hoon Kang. I didn't know the name, didn't recognize the number, didn't know what he'd like to meet you meant for someone like me. But something about the weight of that card, the way it was made, the way the man in the suit had said he said you'd say that. Like someone had already studied me before I even knew I was being watched. I put the card on the corner of the table and left it there. Nobody tells you this part. About being a single mother, people will tell you it's hard. They'll say you're so strong and I don't know how you do it. And they mean it, I think. But what they don't tell you is that the hardest part isn't the emotional weight. It's the math. It's sitting at your kitchen table at 11 o'clock at night, with a pen and a piece of paper, adding up numbers you already know don't add up. Hopping this time they'll be different. They never are. Rent was $1,400. Take home was around $2,200 after taxes. That sounds like enough, until you start subtracting. Utilities, Micah's after-school program, his inhaler, groceries, Ms. Dorothea's evening fee, by the time I was done. What was left was thin. The kind of thin where one unexpected thing, a flat tire, a doctor visit, anything, tips the whole thing sideways. I'd been living inside that math for 4 years, since Micah's father decided the version of his life that included us wasn't the one he wanted. He didn't leave angry, that was almost worse. He just closed the chapter, quietly, like we were something he'd already grieved before he walked out the door. So I knew how to survive thin. I'd gotten good at it. But that particular Wednesday night, I was sitting with the gas bill and a late notice for a school field trip deposit I'd forgotten. And the card was right there, on the corner of the table. I picked it up, put it down. Next morning, Micah's teacher sent home a note. A specialist evaluation, something about processing speed, could be expensive. I sat in my car in the school parking lot for a long time. Then I pulled out the card and called the Charlotte number. He answered on the second ring. "Ms. Whitmore," he said. He already knew my name. And something about that made my breath catch just slightly. I almost hung up right then. The fact that he already knew my name before I said a word. That should have been enough reason, but something kept me on the line. Maybe curiosity, maybe just desperation wearing a calmer face. "I was hoping you'd call," he said. "I have something I'd like to offer you." I told him I was listening. He didn't make the offer over the phone, though. Said he'd rather do it in person. Asked if I'd be willing to come to Charlotte. Said he'd arrange everything, bring me back the same day, and compensate me for my time regardless of whether I agreed to anything. I sat with that phrasing for a second. Regardless of whether I agree to anything. It was careful, deliberate, like he'd thought about exactly how to say it so I wouldn't feel cornered. I told him I'd think about it. Thought about it 2 days. Talked to Ms. Dorothea, just the broad shape of it. A man I'd done something honest for wanted to offer something in return. She looked at me over her reading glasses and said, "Baby, you've been running on empty since I met you. Let the man say what he has to say." That was enough. Saturday morning, 8 a.m. A dark gray Volvo pulled up to my building, clean, quiet, nothing flashy. The driver was a man named Terrence. Barely said 10 words the whole trip, but he held the door open like I was someone important. I sat in the back and watched Georgia turn into South Carolina, turn into North Carolina, through a window that was cleaner than any window in my apartment. We pulled up to a mid-rise building in Charlotte's South End. Dark glass facade, one small plaque by the door. Kang Holdings. Terrence opened my door. I stepped out onto the sidewalk. The air smelled like rain that had already passed. That clean, wet pavement smell that lingers. I looked up at the building. What exactly are you doing, Arielle? I straightened my jacket and walked in. The lobby was quiet. Not empty. There were people moving through it, a woman at the front desk, 2 men near the elevator talking low. But quiet in that specific way that comes from discipline, not emptiness. Nobody rushing, nobody loud, everyone knowing exactly where they were going. The receptionist looked up the moment I walked in. Ms. Whitmore. Yes. Mr. Kang is expecting you. She walked me to the elevator, 14th floor. The doors opened into a small waiting area, white walls. A long couch the color of warm sand. One piece of art on the wall that I didn't understand but somehow liked anyway. A man was standing near the window. He turned when I stepped off. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know what I'd been expecting. My mind had been building a picture for days. Someone older, maybe, more visibly, powerful. But Ji-Hoon Kang was not that. Late 30s, lean, white button-down, sleeves rolled to his elbows, dark trousers, a watch with a brown leather strap on his left wrist. He looked like someone who had chosen to be exactly this, controlled, composed, but not cold. There was something watchful about his eyes, not suspicious, just paying attention, like he was already reading something. He crossed the room, extended his hand. Ms. Whitmore, thank you for coming. Same voice as the phone, measured, no wasted words. Thank you for the ride, I said. Something moved at the corner of his mouth, not quite a smile, just acknowledgement. He gestured to 2 chairs set across from each other. No desk between us, no barrier, just the chairs and a small table with 2 glasses of water. We sat. I'm going to be direct with you, he said. I find it saves time. I appreciate that, I told him. He looked at me for a steady moment. What you did in that garage, people don't do that, he said. Some people do, I said. Not with that much at stake, he said quietly. I didn't answer that. I just waited. He laid it out clean, no fluff. He needed a domestic operations coordinator, not for his company, for his life. Scheduling, property oversight, household staff management, personal logistics. He'd been running it himself for 8 months since his last coordinator moved abroad, and it was taking up time he didn't have. The salary he named. I went very still. It was 3 times what Greystone paid me, and it didn't just register in my head, it landed somewhere lower than that. Somewhere in my chest, warm and heavy at the same time. I kept my face even. What would hours look like? I asked. Flexible, mostly remote. I'd need you physically present in Charlotte or Atlanta maybe twice a month. I have a son, I said, straight out, no softening it. Because if that was going to be a problem, I needed to know before we went any further. He didn't flinch. I know. The way you confirmed your schedule before coming up, that kind of preparation is part of why I'm making this offer. I paused. You already knew about Micah. I background everyone who enters my space. It's protocol, not personal. I sat with that, wasn't sure if it unsettled me, or just told me the honest truth about the world I was considering walking into. What does Kang Holdings actually do? I asked. Real estate acquisition, private investment, development consulting, he said, then a small pause. I have other interests that are less conventional. I won't ask you near those. What I'm offering you is entirely clean. He said it the way someone says something they've already decided to be honest about. I looked at him. "Why me?" I asked. "You could find someone with an actual resume." "I have," he said simply. "It didn't work." "Why not?" He picked up his water, set it back down. "People who already know who I am come in performing something," he said. "You didn't know anything, and you still acted right." He let that sit. "That's not something a resume tells me," he said. I said no. "I need you to hear that part clearly, because the story doesn't make sense if you skip it." I sat in that quiet room with that number on the table, a number that could have changed everything, and I said no. Not angry, not ungrateful, just no. I had a life in Atlanta, a routine I'd built from nothing. Ms. Dorothea, Micah's school, my job, and walking into this man's world, his world, on the strength of one parking garage moment and a 2-hour conversation felt like too much too fast. He didn't push. That surprised me more than the offer did. He just nodded, said the offer would stay open. Terrence would take me home. And that was it. No guilt trip. No, are you sure? He just let me go, like he'd already made peace with both possible answers. Terrence drove me back through 3 states. I sat in the back and told myself I'd made the right call. 3 weeks later, Micah's evaluation results came home. Processing difference, nothing severe, the specialist said, but he'd benefit from a resource program, $400 extra a month. Same week, Greystone restructured, cut 3 part-time positions. Mine wasn't cut, but my hours were reduced. Less hours, less money. The math got thinner. I sat at my kitchen table on a Thursday night in October, numbers on the paper in front of me, Micah's report sitting right next to my pen. The black card on the corner of the table, where it had been living for weeks now. I got up, went to check on Micah. He was asleep, one arm hanging off the side of the bed the way he always slept, his little chest rising and falling slow. I stood in his doorway for a long moment, came back to the table, looked at the card, and picked up my phone. He answered on the first ring. Not the second, the first. "Ms. Whitmore." "The offer," I said. "Is it still open?" A pause, short. "Yes," he said. I exhaled slow. "I have conditions," I told him. "Tell me." "Not okay, not of course whatever you need, just tell me." Present and direct, like he was actually going to hear every word. So I laid it out. Micah comes first, always. No pushback, no questions when I have to step away for him. No calls past 9 on weeknights. No overnight travel without at least a week's notice. Nothing that made me uncomfortable, and I get to define what uncomfortable means. And if something ever felt wrong to me, I walk. No explanation owed, no penalty. Silence on his end. 4 seconds, maybe 5. "Those are reasonable conditions," he said. "I know they are," I told him. "Then, I want to add one of my own." "Go ahead." "Be honest with me," he said, "even when it's inconvenient, especially then." I almost asked why that had to be requested, why a grown man with all of that had to ask someone to just tell him the truth. But I was beginning to understand what kind of world he lived in. One where honesty was rare enough to feel like a favor someone was doing you. "That's not a condition," I said. "That's just how I am." A pause. "I know," he said quietly. "That's why I'm asking you to keep being it." Something about the way he said that. Not demanding, not negotiating. Just asking like he meant it. "I'll start Monday," I said. "I'll have everything ready," he said. And that was it. I set my phone down on the kitchen table, looked at Micah's report, and for the first time in a long time, felt something that wasn't just exhaustion. I drove myself. Terrence offered a car, but I said no. I needed to arrive on my own terms. Something about that felt important in a way I couldn't fully explain. I kissed Micah at the breakfast table, got on I-85 before the morning rush could give me second thoughts, and drove all 4 hours with nothing but my own thoughts and a coffee that went cold somewhere past Spartanburg. I talked to myself the whole way, not out loud, just that inside voice that runs commentary on everything. You sure about this? You don't know this man. You don't know that building. You don't know what any of this actually is. But I also knew the math. And the math didn't leave me many other options. I pulled into Charlotte at 9:47 a.m. Terrence met me in the lobby. I hadn't expected that, and it settled something in me slightly. He walked me upstairs, introduced me to a woman named Sylvie who handled building administration, and showed me to a small office 2 doors down from Ji-Hoon's. Nice office. Window. A desk already set up with a monitor, a notepad, a pen that probably cost more than my lunch. I sat down. Looked around. Breathed. Then Ji-Hoon walked in. White shirt again. Seemed to be his thing. Different watch. He set a folder on my desk without opening it. Atlanta property needs a new management contractor. Current one is overbilling and underpaying maintenance staff. I need your read and a replacement recommendation by end of week. I looked at the folder, then at him. Good morning to you too, I said. He stopped. Something shifted in his face, like he'd stepped on a stair that wasn't there. Good morning, Ms. Whitmore. Good morning, Mr. Kang. I opened the folder. He stood there 1 beat longer than necessary. Then left. I heard what might have been a very quiet exhale on the other side of the door. And I smiled, just a little, just for myself. Then I got to work. By Friday, I had a contractor recommendation on his desk. But I also had 3 other things he hadn't asked me to find. I left them anyway, typed up clean, 1 page. The Atlanta property wasn't just being overbilled. The entire vendor rotation hadn't been reviewed in over 2 years, which meant 3 other contracts were probably bleeding money the same way. The household calendar had no buffer days built in, meaning any disruption would knock everything else sideways. And there was a signature on 2 invoices that didn't match the name on the authorization list. That last one I flagged carefully, just a note, this may need a second look. Ji-Hoon appeared in my doorway Friday afternoon. Pages in his hand, he looked at them, then at me. You found 3 problems I didn't ask you to find, he said. You were paying to fix 4, I said. Seemed wasteful to only fix 1. He was quiet for a moment. The signature discrepancy, how did you catch that? I read everything twice, the second time slower. He looked at me with that steady, measuring expression he had, like something was being recalibrated quietly behind his eyes. Sylvie has been here 6 years, he said. She didn't catch it. Sylvie probably trusts people she's worked with that long, I said. I don't have that history yet, so I read closer. He didn't respond to that right away. Just stood there, holding the pages, looking at me like he was deciding something. Then he set them on my desk, nodded once, and walked back toward his office. At the door he stopped. Ms. Whitmore. Yes. Good week, he said. And left. I sat back in my chair. Outside the window, Charlotte was settling into its Friday evening rhythm. Lights coming on, people moving, the heavy sound of a car door closing somewhere down below. I thought about Micah, about the resource program I'd already enrolled him in, about the gas bill that was already paid. And for the first time in a long time, the math actually added up. By Friday, I had a contractor recommendation on his desk. But I also had 3 other things he hadn't asked me to find. I left them anyway, typed up clean, 1 page. The Atlanta property wasn't just being overbilled. The entire vendor rotation hadn't been reviewed in over 2 years, which meant 3 other contracts were probably bleeding money the same way. The household calendar had no buffer days built in, meaning any disruption would knock everything else sideways. And there was a signature on 2 invoices that didn't match the name on the authorization list. That last one I flagged carefully, just a note, this may need a second look. Ji-Hoon appeared in my doorway Friday afternoon. pages in his hand. He looked at them, then at me. "You found 3 problems I didn't ask you to find," he said. "You were paying to fix 4, I said. "Seemed wasteful to only fix 1. He was quiet for a moment. "The signature discrepancy. How did you catch that?" I read everything twice, the second time slower. He looked at me with that steady, measuring expression he had, like something was being recalibrated quietly behind his eyes. "Sylvie has been here 6 years, he said. "She didn't catch it." "Sylvie probably trusts people she's worked with that long," I said. "I don't have that history yet, so I read closer." He didn't respond to that right away. Just stood there, holding the pages, looking at me like he was deciding something. Then he set them on my desk, nodded once, and walked back toward his office. At the door he stopped. "Ms. Whitmore." "Yes." "Good week," he said, and left. I sat back in my chair. Outside the window, Charlotte was settling into its Friday evening rhythm. Lights coming on, people moving, the heavy sound of a car door closing somewhere down below. I thought about Micah, about the resource program I'd already enrolled him in, about the gas bill that was already paid. And for the first time in a long time, the math actually added up. By the 3rd week, I had a routine. Up at 5:30, get Micah ready, drop him at school, stop at the coffee place on Briarwood that made the kind of dark roast that actually tasted like it meant something. Then home, open the laptop, and work. Most of it was remote. Property updates, contractor communications, schedule management, a few calls here and there. Ji-Hoon ran tight operations, everything documented, everything tracked, which honestly made my job easier, but also told me something about him. People who document everything either trust no one, or have been burned enough times to stop trusting without evidence. Maybe both. We talked maybe twice a day, short calls, direct. He wasn't a small talk person, and honestly neither was I, so it worked. But every now and then he'd say something that made me pause. Like that Wednesday, I was reviewing a vendor contract and found a clause that would have locked him into a 3-year commitment at a rate 20% above market. I flagged it, sent a note. He called back in 4 minutes. "You read the full contract?" "I read everything," I said. "That clause has been in there for 2 renewals," he said. "Nobody flagged it." I didn't say anything to that. "Why did you read the full contract?" he asked, not suspicious, just genuinely curious. "Because you're paying me to protect your interests," I said, "not just manage your calendar." A pause. "Most people in your role wouldn't see it that way," he said. "Most people in my role probably needed the job bad enough not to go looking for extra work," I said. "I need the job bad enough to make sure I keep it." He was quiet for a second. Then, something I didn't expect. He laughed. Not a big laugh, small, quiet, but real. First time I'd heard it. And something about the sound of it, I don't know, it made him feel less like a name on a card, and a little more like a person. It happened on a Thursday. I was on a call with a property manager in Charlotte when my phone lit up, Micah's school, and my stomach dropped the way it always does when that number appears midday. I told Ji-Hoon I had to go, didn't ask, just said it. He said, "Go," before I even finished the sentence. I called the school. Micah had gotten into an argument with another boy during lunch. Nobody was hurt, but he'd shut down completely, wouldn't speak, just sitting in the counselor's office, arms crossed, staring at the wall. I was in the car in 4 minutes. When I got there, he was exactly where they said, small and still in a big chair, chin tucked. The counselor gave me the rundown quietly outside the door, and I went in and sat across from him. He didn't look up. "Micah." "Nothing." "Baby, I'm here. You don't have to talk yet." We sat like that for a while. That's the thing with Micah. You can't pull it out of him. You have to wait for him to bring it to you. Eventually, he said I didn't have a real family. And something in my chest split open clean and quiet. "What'd you say back?" I asked. "Nothing," he said. "I didn't know what to say." I moved to the chair next to him, put my arm around those small shoulders. You want to know what a real family is, I said. It's whoever shows up every single time. He leaned into me a little. We sat there for another few minutes, the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly above us, the sound of the hallway outside. I took the rest of the day off. Didn't ask Ji-Hoon, just sent a message. Family situation, back tomorrow. His reply came in 2 minutes. Take the time you need, the work will be here. I stared at that message, a little longer than necessary. The first time I had to go to Charlotte in person, I brought Micah. I know how that sounds, but it was a school holiday and Ms. Dorothea had a doctor's appointment and I had a property walkthrough that couldn't be moved. So I packed his backpack with his tablet, his headphones, his drawing notebook, and told him we were going on a work trip. He took it very seriously, put on his good shoes without being asked. Terrence met us in the lobby, same as always. When Micah saw him, he stopped walking and looked up at this tall, serious man for a long moment. Terrence looked down at him. You must be Micah, he said. Micah nodded, slow, measuring. I'm Terrence. I know, Micah said. My mom talks about you. Terrence glanced at me. I pressed my lips together. I set Micah up in the small conference room with his things while I did the walkthrough. He was fine. He was always fine when he had his notebook and something to draw. But when I came back 2 hours later, Ji-Hoon was in the conference room, sitting across from my son. They were looking at Micah's drawing notebook together. Ji-Hoon was pointing at something on one of the pages, and Micah was explaining it with his hands, which he only does when he's actually interested in the conversation. I stood in the doorway. Neither of them noticed me right away. Ji-Hoon said something low that I couldn't hear, and Micah nodded seriously and turned to a new page and started drawing something. I don't know why that image hit me the way it did. Maybe because Micah didn't warm up to people easily. Maybe because Ji-Hoon didn't seem like someone who sat on the floor of a conference room looking at a child's drawings. But there they both were. I cleared my throat. Micah looked up. Mama, I'm showing him my buildings. Ji-Hoon stood, straightened his shirt. Something in his expression was quieter than usual. He's got a good eye, he said simply, and walked out. About 6 weeks in, I overheard something I wasn't supposed to. I was early to the Charlotte office, earlier than usual, and the door to the small meeting room near the elevator was pulled almost shut, but not quite. 2 men inside. I recognized one voice as Dong-wook, Ji-Hoon's operations manager. The other I didn't know. I wasn't trying to listen, but I heard my name. Whitmore woman, how long has she been here? 6 weeks, Dong-wook said. And he trusts her with the property files. He trusts her with more than that. A pause. Why? Dong-wook was quiet for a second, then she returned his wallet, full, didn't take anything. That's it. That's it. Another pause, longer this time. He tested her, the other voice said, not a question. Dong-wook didn't confirm or deny, just said, she passed. I stood in the hallway for a long moment after that. My face was very still, but inside, something was turning over slowly. He tested her. I thought about the parking garage, the wallet sitting conveniently near that car, the man in the suit arriving in 7 minutes, not 8, 7, like he'd already been nearby. The specific number Ji-Hoon had named on the phone, the card already prepared. I thought about how he'd said, I was hoping you'd call. Like he knew I would. Because he'd already figured out I would. I went to my office, sat down, put my hands flat on the desk and stared at the wall for a solid minute. Then I opened my laptop. Sent Ji-Hoon a message. When you have a moment, I'd like to speak with you, in person. He replied in 3 minutes. Now works. I closed the laptop, stood up, and walked to his office. I closed the door behind me. He was at his desk, looked up when I came in. Read my face immediately, I could tell. Something shifted in his posture, not defensive, just ready. I sat down across from him, didn't wait. The wallet, I said. That wasn't an accident. He held my gaze, didn't look away, didn't reach for an excuse. No, he said, it wasn't. Just like that, no layering, no let me explain, just no. I sat with that for a second, the honesty of it. You staged it, I said, to see what I'd do. I needed to know who I was bringing into my space, he said. Resumes don't tell me what I need to know. So you manufactured a situation. Yes. I looked at him for a long moment. And if I'd kept the money, I asked. Then Terrence would have driven away, and you never would have heard from me again, he said. And Micah's school evaluation note, the Greystone hours cut. He shook his head once. Those were real. I don't manufacture hardship, Ms. Whitmore. I just waited to see if yours would change you. Something about the directness of that landed differently than I expected. I wanted to be angry, and part of me was. But another part. You should have told me, I said. You're right, he said. I should have. No qualification, no but, just, you're right. I exhaled. Is there anything else I should know about how I got here? He looked at me steadily. No, he said. Everything after that parking garage has been real. The room was very quiet. Okay, I said finally. Okay, he repeated. I'm not quitting, I said, but if you ever do something like that again, I walk and I won't come back. He nodded once. Understood, he said. And I believed him. Something changed after that conversation. Not dramatically, not all at once, just a degree of warmth that hadn't been there before, like a window that had always been slightly fogged finally clearing. He started saying good morning without being prompted. Small thing, but I noticed. He started leaving notes on my desk when I wasn't in, not instructions, just observations. A name of a contractor he thought was worth looking into. An article about a property management software he thought might be useful. Things that said I was thinking about the work and I thought of you. And one afternoon, he appeared in my office doorway with 2 coffees. Set one on my desk. You take it black, he said, like a statement. How did you know that? You always finish it. People who put things in their coffee leave a little at the bottom. I stared at him. You've been watching how I drink my coffee. He looked mildly unbothered. I pay attention to people. I picked up the cup. That's either very thoughtful or slightly alarming, I said. Probably both, he said. And he almost smiled, not quite, but closer than before. He went back to his office. I sat there holding the coffee. And I realized something had shifted in the way I thought about coming to Charlotte. It had stopped feeling like crossing into someone else's world. And started feeling like going somewhere familiar. That realization sat with me for the rest of the afternoon. I wasn't sure what to do with it yet. So I just filed it somewhere quiet. And went back to work. There were things about Ji-Hoon that nobody told me directly. I pieced them together, the way you do when you're paying attention. He didn't eat lunch most days. Not because he was busy, he was always busy, but that wasn't it. It was more like he forgot. Like the signal that told most people, hey, it's been 6 hours just, didn't reach him. I started leaving something on his desk at noon. Nothing elaborate, whatever I'd grabbed for myself, split. A sandwich. Some fruit. A container of rice from the place on the corner that he'd mentioned exactly once and apparently I'd filed away. He never commented on it. But it was always gone by one. I also noticed he made calls in the early morning, before 6 sometimes, standing at the window of his office. I could hear the low murmur of Korean through the wall once when I'd come in early. I didn't speak the language, but I knew the cadence of something heavy. The pauses that meant hard things were being said. I asked Sylvie once, casual, if he had family in Korea. She said his mother was in Seoul, that they spoke regularly, that it wasn't always easy. She didn't say more than that. I didn't ask. But the next time I heard that early morning murmur through the wall, I made sure his coffee was on his desk by the time the call ended. He came out of his office and stopped when he saw it. Looked at me. "You were here early," he said. "Needed to finish the Raleigh report," I said. "Didn't make it a thing." He looked at the coffee, then back at me. He didn't say thank you exactly. But he sat down at his desk and wrapped both hands around the cup like it was something he needed. And that felt like enough. It came out of nowhere. We were in the car on the way home from school, a Thursday, raining, the kind of rain that comes down gray and sideways and makes the whole world feel like it's moving slower. Micah was in the back seat with his seat belt on, looking out the window. I was thinking about a contract renewal. And then he said, "Mama, is Mr. Kang your friend?" I glanced in the rearview mirror. "He's the person I work for, baby." "But do you like him?" I turned onto our street, windshield wipers going. "Yeah," I said slowly. "I think I do." "He remembers stuff," Micah said. "What do you mean?" When I told him I was drawing buildings, he asked me next time which kind was my favorite. He paused. He remembered to ask. People don't always remember. I pulled into the parking spot and turned off the engine. Sat there for a second in the quiet, just the sound of rain on the roof. "When did he ask you that?" I said. "Last time we went to Charlotte. You were on the phone in the hallway." I hadn't known that. "Micah, what did you say? What's your favorite kind?" "Buildings with big windows," he said, very serious, "so the light can get in." I turned around and looked at my son. 7 years old, serious face, absolutely no idea what he'd just said to me. "That's a good answer, baby," I told him. We went inside, I made dinner, did homework, did the whole routine. But later that night, when Micah was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and thought about what he'd said. People don't always remember. And I thought about Ji-Hoon standing at that window every morning. And whether anyone in his life remembered to check on him the way he'd quietly started checking on us. I wasn't sure. But the question stayed with me. It started on a Monday. One of Ji-Hoon's Atlanta properties had a water main issue, unexpected, expensive, and the kind of thing that needed boots on the ground immediately. I coordinated the emergency contractors, managed the displaced tenant communications, and tracked every dollar of the emergency spend. But on Wednesday, Micah's resource teacher called. He was struggling. The transition to the new program was harder than expected. He was withdrawing again. She was concerned. I took the call in my car in a parking lot. And I just sat there after, hands on the wheel, eyes closed. I was managing someone else's crisis perfectly and couldn't fix my own son's. That feeling, it has a weight to it that's hard to describe. Like everything you're holding gets slightly heavier all at once. I went back to my laptop, finished the property report, sent the expense summary, responded to 12 emails. Did everything right. But Ji-Hoon called that evening, unusual for him. He almost always texted, and when I answered, he said, "How are you doing?" Not "Did you finish the report?" Not "I need something." Just "How are you doing?" I wasn't prepared for that. It's been a week," I said honestly. "Micah," he said. I paused. "How did you?" "You finished the expense report in 40 minutes less than you usually take," he said quietly. "You only rush when something else is on your mind." I exhaled, long and slow. "He's having a hard time with the new program," I said. Silence, then. "He's adjusting," Ji-Hoon said. "Give it time, he's tougher than the situation." He said it simply, no performance, just stated it like a fact he'd already decided was true. I don't know why that helped. But it did. I held the phone for a second after we hung up. And for the first time all week, I breathed. I had a rule. I'd had it since day one, quiet and firm in the back of my mind. This is work. Keep it work. Because I'd seen what happened when lines got blurry. I'd lived it once, and I wasn't doing it again. But somewhere around month 3, the lines were getting harder to see. Not because anything inappropriate happened. Nothing did. It was more subtle than that. It was the coffee he left. The way he asked about Micah by name. The morning I came in upset about something small and stupid, and he just didn't talk much that day. Like he'd sensed it and decided to give me space without making it a thing. It was the way he listened. Not just heard, listened. Like whatever I was saying was the only thing in the room. I talked to Ms. Dorothea about it one Saturday while Micah was at a birthday party. I didn't use names, just described it. She listened, sipped her tea, then said, "Baby, what exactly are you afraid of?" "Losing the job," I said immediately. "That's not what you're afraid of," she said. I looked at her. "You're afraid it's real," she said. "Because if it's real, then you have to decide what to do about it. And deciding is scarier than just keeping things the way they are." I didn't say anything to that. She refilled her cup. "You've been managing everything by yourself for so long," she said. "That someone just showing up probably feels like a trap." I stared at the table. "Does it feel like a trap?" she asked. I thought about it honestly. "No," I said. "Then maybe," she said gently, "it isn't one." I drove home with that sitting heavy and quiet in my chest. Not resolved. Not acted on. Just held. I wasn't supposed to be in the office that morning. I'd come in early to drop off some signed contracts before heading back to Atlanta. Figured I'd be in and out in 20 minutes. The building was quiet. Barely anyone on the 14th floor yet. But Ji-Hoon was already there. I could hear him before I reached my office. That low murmur through the wall again. Korean, early morning. The same cadence I'd heard before, measured at first. Then something tighter, something that had weight in it. I moved quietly, didn't want to interrupt. But then I heard something I recognized, without needing translation. Silence. The kind that follows something hard being said. I sat at my desk and opened the contracts, tried to focus, but the silence on the other side of that wall was loud in a way I couldn't ignore. 20 minutes later, his door opened. He came out, saw me, stopped. "I didn't know you were in," he said. "Dropping off the Raleigh contracts," I said. "I'll be out of your way in a minute." He nodded, moved toward the small kitchen at the end of the hall. I finished what I was doing, stood up, put on my jacket. And I don't know why I said it. I hadn't planned to. "Is she okay?" I asked. He turned from the kitchen doorway. "Your mother," I said. "Is she okay?" He looked at me for a long moment. Something moved across his face, quiet and unguarded, there and gone in about 2 seconds. "She's stubborn," he said finally. "Refuses to move closer, refuses help." "Sounds familiar," I said. He tilted his head slightly. I picked up my bag, the kind of stubborn that keeps people up at night. He was quiet. "Yeah," he said, soft, like it left something in the air. I said goodbye and left. But I thought about that the whole drive back to Atlanta. The weight of it. The way it sounded less like an answer, and more like something finally said out loud. Dong-wook didn't trust me. He never said it directly. He was too careful for that. But it lived in the way he CC'd himself on emails I sent. The way he'd appear in doorways when Ji-Hoon and I were talking. The way he'd ask me questions that sounded like small talk but were actually small tests. I didn't take it personally. I understood it. He'd been with Ji-Hoon for 7 years. Watched people come in and out of that space. Watched some of them cause damage on their way out. And then here comes this woman from Atlanta, no industry background, no connections, just a parking garage story. And suddenly she's 2 doors down from the man he'd spent years protecting. Of course, he didn't trust me. One afternoon, he came into my office and closed the door behind him. Sat down. I kept working for a second, then looked up. "What do you want to know?" I said. He blinked. "Excuse me." "You've been trying to figure me out for 2 months," I said. "You can just ask." He studied me, then leaned back slightly. "What do you want from him?" he said. "A salary and a stable situation for my son," I said. "Same thing I wanted when I walked in." "That's it. That's it." He was quiet for a moment. "People come into his space with agendas," he said. "They always have something they're building toward." "I'm building toward Micah having what he needs," I said. "That's the whole agenda." Dong-wook looked at me, long and steady. Then he stood up, moved toward the door. "His last domestic coordinator filed information with a competitor," he said quietly. "Cost him 2 properties and 3 months of damage control." He opened the door. "I'm not telling you that to scare you," he said. "I'm telling you so you understand why I watch." "I understand," I said. He nodded once, and left. After that, he stopped CCing himself on my emails. It happened because of a scheduling overlap. I was in Charlotte for a property review that ran 3 hours longer than planned. By the time it wrapped, it was nearly 7. Traffic back to Atlanta would be brutal, and I hadn't eaten since breakfast. Ji-Hoon appeared at my office door. "There's a place 2 blocks over," he said, "if you haven't eaten." I looked at him. "It's not a thing," he said, "just food." I almost said no out of habit. "Okay," I said instead. The restaurant was small, Korean, the kind of place that looked like nothing from outside and smelled like everything once you walked in doenjang and sesame and something charred and wonderful. The owner knew Ji-Hoon, didn't make a fuss about it, just nodded and walked us to a corner table. We ordered, the food came fast. And here's the thing. We talked. Not about work, not about properties or contracts or vendor rotations, just talked. He asked about where I grew up. I told him Savannah, Georgia. Small house, big family, grandmother who cooked like it was a spiritual practice. He smiled at that, a real one this time. He told me he grew up partly in Seoul, partly in Charlotte. That his father had come over in the 90s and built something small and real from nothing. That Ji-Hoon had spent most of his 20s trying to protect what his father built, and most of his 30s trying to grow past it. "Did you," I asked, "grow past it?" He thought about that honestly. "Still working on it," he said. I respected that answer more than a clean yes would have. We walked back to the office in the dark, the street wet from earlier rain, lights reflecting in the puddles on the sidewalk. Neither of us said much on the walk back, but the quiet between us felt different now. Less like distance, and more like comfort. The problem with comfort is it sneaks up on you. You don't decide to get comfortable with someone. It just happens. One day you're watching your words carefully, and the next day you're saying exactly what you think and not even noticing the shift. That's what happened with Ji-Hoon. I stopped editing myself around him. And I only realized it one afternoon when I told him, flat out, no softening, that a decision he'd made about a Raleigh contractor was going to cost him more in the long run than what he was trying to save right now. He looked at me. "You're telling me I'm wrong," he said. "I'm telling you the math doesn't work the way you think it does," I said, which is the same thing. A beat. "Most people don't say that to me," he said. "Most people aren't being paid to protect your interests," I said. He was quiet for a second. Then he pulled the contract back across the desk and looked at the numbers again. Really looked. "Show me," he said. I walked him through it, sat across from him and went line by line. He listened the way he always did, completely, no interruptions. And when I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "You're right," he said. Just like that. No ego, no well, but just, "You're right." I started to get up. "Arielle," he said. First time he'd used my first name. I stilled. He seemed to notice it too, a brief pause. "Thank you," he said, "for saying it straight." I nodded. "That's what you hired me for." "No," he said quietly. "I hired you because you're honest. The rest is just what came with it." I walked back to my office. Sat down. Stared at the wall for a second. He'd used my name. Small thing, probably nothing. But it sat with me, like a door that had opened slightly. And no one had closed it yet. It happened because of a scheduling overlap. I was in Charlotte for a property review that ran 3 hours longer than planned. By the time it wrapped, it was nearly 7. Traffic back to Atlanta would be brutal, and I hadn't eaten since breakfast. Ji-Hoon appeared at my office door. "There's a place 2 blocks over," he said, "if you haven't eaten." I looked at him. "It's not a thing," he said, "just food." I almost said no out of habit. "Okay," I said instead. The restaurant was small, Korean, the kind of place that looked like nothing from outside and smelled like everything once you walked in doenjang and sesame and something charred and wonderful. The owner knew Ji-Hoon, didn't make a fuss about it, just nodded and walked us to a corner table. We ordered, the food came fast. And here's the thing. We talked. Not about work, not about properties or contracts or vendor rotations, just talked. He asked about where I grew up. I told him Savannah, Georgia. Small house, big family, grandmother who cooked like it was a spiritual practice. He smiled at that, a real one this time. He told me he grew up partly in Seoul, partly in Charlotte. That his father had come over in the 90s and built something small and real from nothing. That Ji-Hoon had spent most of his 20s trying to protect what his father built. And most of his 30s trying to grow past it. "Did you," I asked, "grow past it?" He thought about that honestly. "Still working on it," he said. I respected that answer more than a clean yes would have. We walked back to the office in the dark, the street wet from earlier rain, lights reflecting in the puddles on the sidewalk. Neither of us said much on the walk back. But the quiet between us felt different now. Less like distance, and more like comfort. I called my sister that night. Her name is Priya, older than me by 4 years, lives in Savannah, 3 kids, married to a man named Leo who fixes cars and makes the best jerk chicken you've ever had in your life. She's the person I call when I need someone who'll tell me the truth without making it pretty. I told her everything. The wallet, the job, the way things had shifted, the dinner, the first name. She listened all the way through. Then she said, "So what's the problem?" "Priya." "No, genuinely, what's the actual problem?" "He's my employer," I said. "Okay." "His world is complicated." "Okay." "I have Micah to think about." "Arielle," her voice was gentle but firm, "you've been using Micah as a reason not to let anything good near you for 4 years." I opened my mouth. Closed it. "That little boy needs to see his mother choose herself sometimes," she said. "Not instead of him, but for her, so he knows that's allowed." I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark. "What if it goes wrong?" I said. "Then it goes wrong," she said, "and you handle it like you handle everything." "And the job." "You were surviving before this job," she said. "You'll survive after it if it comes to that, but Arielle," she paused, "when's the last time something felt real to you, like actually real?" I didn't answer, because the answer was sitting right there between us both. "Yeah," Priya said softly, "that's what I thought." We talked for another hour about nothing important. But after I hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time. Not afraid exactly. Just very, very aware. That something had already started. Whether I'd decided it should or not. He gave it to me on a Tuesday. I hadn't expected it. There was nothing special about the day, no milestone, no occasion. It was just a regular morning in Charlotte, gray sky outside, the smell of coffee coming from the kitchen down the hall. He came into my office and set a small black box on my desk. Not jewelry, I want to be clear about that. It was rectangular, flat, more like something documents come in, or something official. I looked at it, then at him. "What is this?" "Open it," he said. I did. Inside was a single card, heavier than regular paper, with the Kang Holdings letterhead, and on it, a title. Director of Domestic and Private Operations. And a new number. Significantly new. I looked up. "You've been doing a director's job since week 2, he said simply. "The title and the compensation should match the work." Ji-Hoon. "You caught 4 problems I didn't ask you to find. You rebuilt the Atlanta vendor structure from scratch. You handled a tenant crisis at midnight without calling me once because you knew you could handle it." He paused. "You've earned this." I looked back at the card. "This changes my tax situation considerably," I said. He almost smiled. "I have an accountant." I set the card down carefully, looked at him standing there in his white shirt, hands easy at his sides. "Why does it matter to you?" I asked. "That it matches. You could just pay me more without the title." He thought about that for a second. "Because you should be able to say what you are," he said, out loud to anyone. Something tightened quietly in my chest. I picked up the card. "Thank you," I said. He nodded. Moved toward the door. "Mike is going to ask what a director does," I said. "Tell him it means his mother runs things," Ji-Hoon said. And left. I sat there with the card in my hand, smiling at nothing in particular. After the promotion, something settled. Not just financially, though that was real and I won't pretend it wasn't, but something inside me settled too, like I'd been waiting for the ground to shift beneath me this whole time, and it hadn't. And slowly, I started to believe it wasn't going to. I stopped flinching at unexpected calls. I stopped preparing mentally for the moment it would all disappear. And I started doing the job like someone who intended to stay. That shift changed how I worked. I started bringing ideas instead of just solutions. Started thinking about the whole structure of his operations, not just the individual problems. Put together a 12-month property review proposal that Dong-wook actually read twice before passing to Ji-Hoon. Ji-Hoon approved it the same day. Dong-wook stopped by my office after. "That was good work," he said. Coming from him, that was practically a standing ovation. I also noticed things changing in Ji-Hoon. He started leaving the office before 8 sometimes, which he almost never did before. Would mention grabbing food or taking a walk. Small things, but for a man who'd been treating rest like an inefficiency. It was something. One evening, I was packing up, and he appeared in my doorway. "You're driving back tonight," he said. "Yeah, Micah's got a thing in the morning." He nodded. "Text when you get in." I paused. "So I know you made it," he said, not explaining further. I looked at him for a second. "Okay," I said. I texted him when I got home. He replied 2 minutes later. Just good. One word. But I sat in my parked car in front of my building and read it twice. And then I went inside. Fed Micah the dinner Ms. Dorothea had left. And for the first time, in as long as I could remember, went to bed before midnight. Micah met Ji-Hoon properly for the first time on a Saturday. Not in the office, not a work thing. Ji-Hoon had called to say he was going to be in Atlanta for a site visit and asked if I'd reviewed the updated property files. I said yes, come by the office on Monday. He said he was actually near my neighborhood. There was a pause. "There's a good spot near you," he said, "if Micah wants to get out." I stood in my kitchen for a second. "Let me ask him," I said. Micah was at the table drawing. I told him a man from my work was nearby and asked if he wanted to go get something to eat. He looked up. "The one who remembered about my buildings." "Yeah," I said, "that one." Micah considered this seriously for about 4 seconds. "Okay," he said, and went back to drawing. We met Ji-Hoon at a small diner on Fairview. He was already there when we arrived, sitting in a booth, no suit this time, dark jeans, simple shirt. He looked different outside that building, less like someone you were supposed to be professional around. More like just a person. Micah slid into the booth across from him and looked at him the way he looked at everything, slow and thorough. "You have a lot of buildings," Micah said. I do, Ji-Hoon said. How many? Enough that I need your mother to keep track of them. Micah nodded. Apparently that made sense to him. They talked about buildings the whole meal. What made them good? What made them bad? Micah had opinions, strong ones, and Ji-Hoon listened to every one of them like they mattered. I sat across from them both and ate my food and mostly just watched. At one point, Micah looked at Ji-Hoon very seriously and said, "Do you make my mom tired?" Ji-Hoon glanced at me, then back at Micah. "I try not to," he said honestly. Micah thought about that. "Okay," he said, and went back to his food. It was a Wednesday evening. We'd stayed late in Charlotte, both of us, rare overlap, working through a complicated acquisition that needed eyes from two different angles. By 9, the building was quiet, and it was just the two of us and the hum of the lights. I was standing at the window in his office looking at the city below while he finished a call. When he hung up, I heard him set the phone on the desk and exhale, the kind of exhale that ends a long day. "Done?" I asked. "Done," he said. I turned around. He was leaning back in his chair looking at me in that quiet way he had, not reading me for information this time, just looking. "What?" I said. "Nothing," he said, "just." He stopped. I waited. "I didn't expect this," he said finally. "The acquisition." "You," he said, simple, direct, like he decided to just say it. The room got very still. "Ji-Hoon, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I just want you to know, because you told me once that honesty was just how you are, and I'm trying to be the same." I looked at him for a long moment. This man who ran operations across 2 states and spoke to his mother in another country in a language that carried weight, who left food on desks without making it mean something out loud, who listened to a 7-year-old's opinions about buildings like they were board meetings. "I know," I said softly. "You know." "I know you didn't expect it," I said. "Neither did I." He held my gaze. "What do we do with that?" he asked. I picked up my jacket from the chair. "We go home," I said, "and we think about it. And then we're honest about what we find," I said. He nodded. I walked to the door. "Arielle." I stopped. "Thank you," he said, "for still being here." I didn't trust my voice right then. So I just nodded. And left. I thought about it for 3 days. Gave it real, honest space. Not the romantic version, not the version where you imagine how something could go right. The real version. The one where you look at every way it could go wrong and ask yourself if you could live through it. What if it changed the work dynamic permanently? What if Micah got attached and it fell apart? What if Ji-Hoon's world, the parts I didn't have full visibility into, created problems I couldn't protect my son from? These were real questions. I didn't brush them away. But I also asked the other ones. What if it was exactly what it felt like? What if the man who staged a wallet test to find one honest person had actually found her and knew it? What if Micah's question, "Do you make my mom tired?" and Ji-Hoon's answer, "I try not to," was the most honest summary of what this already was. On the 3rd evening, I was sitting on the couch after Micah was asleep. Rain outside. The good kind, steady, not angry. The kind that makes the whole world feel contained. My phone was on the cushion next to me. I picked it up. Opened a message to Ji-Hoon. Typed, I thought about it. Waited. 3 minutes. His reply, and I stared at the screen for a second. Then typed, "I think we stop pretending we're just work." The little dots appeared, stopped, appeared again. Then, I was hoping you'd say that. I laughed, small, quiet. Typed back, "You always say that." He replied, "Because you always do the right thing, eventually." I set the phone down. Looked at the rain against the window. Felt something in my chest that had been braced for a long time. Finally, let go. Dong-wook noticed before anyone said anything. Of course he did. He didn't say a word for about 2 weeks, just watched, filed things away in that careful, methodical way of his, and then one afternoon he appeared in my office, closed the door, and sat down. I looked up from my screen. I'm not here to make it complicated, he said. Okay, I said carefully. I just want to say one thing, and then I'm done. Go ahead. He leaned forward slightly, hands folded. He's been doing this, all of this, alone for a long time, he said. Not because he had to, because he didn't know how to let it be any other way. I listened. I've watched people try to get close to him for years, he said. Some of them wanted what he had. Some of them wanted what they thought he could give them. None of them ever just, he paused, showed up straight. Dong-wook, I'm not asking you for anything, he said. I'm not warning you. I'm just telling you that what you did, the way you came in here and did the work and said the true thing and didn't perform for him. He stopped. It mattered, more than you probably know. He stood up. That's it, he said. That's all I came to say. He moved to the door. Thank you, I said quietly. He paused with his hand on the door. Don't make me regret trusting you, he said, but the edge was gone from it. It sounded less like a warning now, more like something a brother would say. He left. I sat there for a moment, thinking about 7 years of watching someone you care about carry everything alone, and what it must feel like to finally see them set something down. I told Micah on a Sunday. Not with a big talk, not with a sit down, I need to tell you something. Just during breakfast, while he was eating his cereal and reading the back of the box the way he always did. You know how you asked me if Mr. Kang was my friend? He looked up. Yeah. Well, he's becoming something more than that, I said. I wanted you to know. Micah looked at me for a moment, then looked back at his cereal box. Like a boyfriend, he said, very matter of fact. Maybe, something like that. He thought about this. Does he know about my buildings? He said. He does, I said. Does he know you burn waffles? He doesn't know that yet. You should probably tell him, Micah said seriously. I pressed my lips together so I wouldn't laugh. I'll add it to the list, I said. Micah went back to his cereal. But after a minute he said, quiet and careful, Mama, is he going to leave? And there it was, the real question underneath the cereal and the buildings and the easy talk. I moved my chair closer to him. I can't promise you what the future looks like, baby, I said honestly. But what I can tell you is that he's not the kind of person who does things halfway, and neither am I. Micah looked at me. And if he does leave? Then we'll be okay, I said, because we've always been okay, me and you. He thought about that. Then he leaned over and put his head against my arm for just a second, the way he did sometimes when words ran out. I put my hand on top of his head. We sat like that for a minute. Just the sound of the morning outside. And the two of us, steady as we'd always been. He told me about his father on a quiet Friday evening. We were in Atlanta. He'd come down for a site review and stayed for dinner at my place for the first time. Micah had fallen asleep on the couch watching something, and we were at the kitchen table with tea going cold between us. He started talking slowly, like he was choosing the words from a long way away. His father had built the original company from almost nothing, worked impossible hours, sacrificed things Ji-Hoon didn't fully understand until he was older, and when Ji-Hoon was 24, his father got sick, quickly, the kind of sick that doesn't give you time to prepare. He died before Ji-Hoon felt like he'd said what needed saying. I took over the company, Ji-Hoon said, and I just worked for years, like if I built it big enough it would mean something, like it would finish the conversation we didn't get to have. I didn't say anything, just listened. It doesn't work that way, he said, almost to himself. No, I said quietly, it doesn't. He looked at his tea. My mother wants me to come back to Seoul, he said. Not forever, just more. She's not asking for much. Are you going too? He was quiet for a moment. I'm trying to figure out what my life looks like now, he said. What I'm building it toward, not just what I'm building. I looked at him across my kitchen table. This man in my house, at my table, tea going cold, being honest in the way that costs something. That sounds like the right question to be asking, I said. He looked at me. It took me a long time to start asking it, he said. The important ones usually do, I said. He nodded slow. Outside, the Atlanta night was doing its thing. Distant traffic, someone's music 2 floors up, the ordinary sound of a city just living. And inside, something quiet and real. People noticed. Not in a dramatic way. Nobody said anything outright. But the energy in the building had shifted in that way that happens when 2 people stop pretending and start just being honest about what they are. Sylvie started smiling at me differently. Not sly, just warm, like something she'd been waiting to see had finally shown up. Terrence, who never said much, held the car door one morning and said quietly, "You're good for him," then closed the door and didn't say another word about it. Even the vendor calls felt different. Like I'd gone from Ji-Hoon's coordinator to something that didn't have a title yet, but carried more weight. Ji-Hoon treated me the same at work. Professional, direct. That didn't change and I respected it. He wasn't the type to blur the lines where the work was concerned, and neither was I. But the small things accumulated. He started keeping Micah's drawings. I didn't notice at first, but one afternoon I was in his office going over the quarterly property review, and I saw on the edge of his desk near the window a drawing. Blue pen on white paper. A building with big windows and what appeared to be a very lopsided tree next to it. I stopped talking mid-sentence. Pointed at it. Is that? He gave it to me, Ji-Hoon said simply. Last time you brought him to Charlotte. I looked at the drawing, then at the man behind the desk. You kept it, I said. It's a good building, he said, completely straight-faced. I looked back at the drawing. Micah had written in the corner in his careful 7-year-old print. For Mr. Kang, the windows are so the light gets in. I pressed my lips together. Looked up at the ceiling for a second. You okay? Ji-Hoon asked. Fine, I said. Allergies. He looked like he didn't believe me even slightly. But he let it go. Like he always did, with the things that didn't need words. 8 months in, I looked up one day and realized what had happened. Not what happened between Ji-Hoon and me, though that was real and growing and I'd stopped being afraid of it. I mean what I had built. The Atlanta vendor structure I'd rebuilt from scratch was saving Kang Holdings nearly $60,000 a year. The 12-month property review I'd proposed, the one Dong-wook had read twice, had identified 2 underperforming assets and one hidden opportunity that Ji-Hoon moved on within 30 days. The household operations ran clean. No gaps, no surprises. I had a team now. Small 2 people under me, both sharp. A property analyst named Quame and an operations assistant named Bet, who reminded me of a younger version of myself in all the best ways. And Micah was thriving. The resource program had taken hold by month 2. His teacher sent home a note in March that made me cry in my car in the parking lot, not sad tears, the other kind. She said he was engaged, he was participating, he was blossoming in the classroom. He'd also started drawing buildings with more detail, more windows, more light. I sat at my desk one afternoon in Charlotte and looked at the view outside, the South End skyline doing its afternoon thing, all glass and gray and small patches of sky. And I thought about the parking garage on Delmer Street. The 11-hour shift. The aching feet. The wallet on the ground. The choice to call the number. And I thought about how the whole shape of my life had turned on that one small decision to do the right thing when nobody was watching. Except someone was watching. And what he saw changed everything. Not because he saved me. I want to be clear about that. I was never waiting to be saved. I was waiting for someone who recognized what I already was and paid attention long enough to see it. Ji-Hoon went to Seoul in April. 2 weeks. He'd finally agreed to spend real time with his mother, not a quick visit, but actual time. He told me before he left, standing in the Charlotte office doorway with a bag over one shoulder looking slightly like a man who'd talked himself into something before he could talk himself back out. 2 weeks, he said. 2 weeks, I confirmed. Dongwook has the operational approvals. You have everything else. I know, I said. I ran everything while you were here too. He almost smiled. Call me if something. Go see your mother, Ji-Hoon, I said. He looked at me. Something in his face settled. Okay, he said. He called from Seoul 3 days in. Not about work, just called. It was late his time. I could hear it in his voice, that specific tired that belongs to a different time zone. He told me his mother had made him doenjang jjigae, a fermented soybean stew, his childhood thing, and they'd sat at her kitchen table for 2 hours just talking. How was it? I asked. Like finally finishing a sentence, he said. I smiled into the phone. Good, I said. Micah had started asking when Mr. Ji-Hoon was coming back. He'd stopped calling him Mr. Kang somewhere around month 2, and nobody had corrected him. When Ji-Hoon came home 2 weeks later, Micah made him a drawing of Seoul. He'd looked it up on my laptop, the skyline, the river, the bridge with the lights, drawn the whole thing in careful detail. Ji-Hoon looked at it for a long moment, then looked at Micah. How did you know about the bridge? He said. I looked it up, Micah said simply. I wanted to see where you went. Ji-Hoon folded the drawing carefully, put it in his jacket pocket, like it was something he was going to keep for a long time. I'm going to tell you how it ended. Except it didn't really end. That's the thing. Real stories don't end, they just arrive somewhere. They find a shape that feels like it was always meant to be there, even though you couldn't have drawn it yourself at the start. It's a Wednesday morning. 11 months since a parking garage in Atlanta. I'm at my desk in Charlotte. The window is doing that thing it does on clear mornings, filling the office with long, flat light that makes everything look a little more permanent than it is. Quaim is running a property audit downstairs. Bet has the vendor calls handled. Micah is at school, thriving. His latest drawing is pinned above my monitor, a building with enormous windows, a figure in the window that might be him, and at the bottom in his print. So the light gets in. Ji-Hoon stops in my doorway at 9:15. White shirt, same watch, coffee in one hand. Quarterly review is at 10, he says. I know, I scheduled it. You eat breakfast. I had something. That means no. It means I had coffee. He disappears, comes back 3 minutes later, sets a container of food on my desk without a word and moves back toward his office. Ji-Hoon, I say. He stops. I look at him, this man who staged a wallet test and got more than he bargained for, who kept a child's drawing on his desk, who finally sat at his mother's table and finished a sentence he'd been leaving open for years. Thank you, I say, for the test, even though it was wrong. He tilts his head slightly. It was wrong, he agrees. But I understand why, I say. And I'm glad I passed. Something in his face opens up, quiet and real. So am I, he says. He goes back to his office. I open the container. Outside, Charlotte is just being Charlotte, ordinary and alive. And inside, for the first time in a very long time, everything is exactly enough. She didn't find a wallet. She found proof that doing the right thing, even when you're tired, even when it costs you, even when nobody's watching, still matters. It always matters. If this story hit you somewhere real, if you felt Arielle's tired, if you recognized that kitchen table math, if you've ever stood at a crossroads and chose right when choosing wrong would have been so much easier, this one was for you. Drop a comment below and tell me, what would you have done with that wallet? I genuinely want to know. And if you're new here, welcome. This is the kind of story we tell in this space. Real, human, the kind that stays with you a little after the screen goes dark. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. Because the next story, the next one is going to hit different. Like that first one always does. I'll see you there.